Hello, I am the Script Doctor and welcome to the channel. I think it's pretty fair to say that of all the Disney Star Wars projects, The Mandalorian is the one with its best foot forward. Granted, its toes have been stubbed and it's attached to a broken ankle, it's still in a better condition compared to the rest of the Disney Star Wars brand.
I'm the Jedi.
Ugh. Regardless, when something is done well, it should be lauded, but at the same time not put high up on a pedestal away from criticism. As writers, it is our goal to try and write better than the competition, and the best way to do that is to see what is out there, what opportunities were missed so that you can use them for your own work, and what mistakes were made so that you can avoid them with your story. The Mandalorian is a great way to learn how to identify and ask these questions of yourself when crafting a story, because while it has those issues, it still manages to entertain. And since it is not boring or revolting like other franchises, it becomes a task that is easily fueled by imagination rather than disappointment. Please be advised this review contains spoilers. If you do not want to be spoiled, please feel free to return to my review after having seen the episode. With that being said, let's take a look at Season 2, Episode 1 of The Mandalorian, Chapter 9, The Marshal. After a brief recap of the last season, we find the Mandalorian and the child on a strange world with eerie night creatures and colorful graffiti. The visual is pretty cool, and I think there's even a Cylon drawn on the wall as an out-of-universe nod to Battlestar Galactica. The Mandalorian enters a combat arena, and we learn that he's meeting with a Cyclops species that may help our hero find other Mandalorians. We are left to infer that he's seeking other Mandalorians in the hope that other coverts may have more information on the Jedi so he can have a reliable starting point for returning the child to its people. The tables turn against the Mandalorian when it is revealed that the Cyclops orchestrated this scenario to steal his Beskar armor. From this action, I was under the impression that the Cyclops used this underground rumor that he knew of the locations of other Mandalorians as a means to lure out Mandalorian survivors of the Great Purge to ambush them and steal their Beskar, which is kind of true and kind of not. After the Mandalorian thwarts the subterfuge, he captures the Cyclops and demands to know where the other Mandalorians are. It turns out that the Cyclops does know of other Mandalorians, so he's using real knowledge to bait others instead of it being an outright scam to steal the armor. While the set piece is pretty fun and it has its stakes and goals, I found the reveal of the Cyclops actually having the information the Mandalorian needs to be a tad contrived. I thought the Cyclops is pulling a proper grift. He wants Beskar, the Mandalorians have Beskar. The Mandalorians are scattered from the Great Purge, so he exploits their refugee status by passing a rumor in the underworld that he knows where more are hiding, hoping that any without a tribe or covert will seek him out. Whatever Mandalorians reach out to him, he plans an ambush to get their Beskar. But the fact that the Cyclops' rumor is actually real kinda defeats the scheming aspect of this new character. It makes him far more foolish than intended. Why use real information to get a mark when a lie can be just as successful? Remember, characters need to face conflict and experience setbacks. Their goals cannot be easily achieved. There's nothing wrong in the context of this show for the Cyclops character to not have the information the Mandalorian is looking for. If anything, the Cyclops being a full-blown grifter with zero value by the end emphasizes how difficult the Mandalorian's task will be. It also shows the desperation of the Mandalorian. He fell for a lie. He needs to learn to do a little more investigation beforehand or risk being ambushed again. It would have given him a significant character developing moment, and the harder the goal is, the more likely we as an audience will be invested in the hero wanting to succeed. You need to throw in a defeat here and there so that the reward will also be cathartic. But that isn't what we got here. The Mandalorian still succeeds. He thwarts the ambush and gets the information he needs. Which means this ends up being more of a plot point than character development, a contrivance designed to take the Mandalorian back to Tatooine. It's the plot driving the character instead of the character driving the plot. We know it's a plot contrivance because of this.
What? I've spent much time on Tatooine. I've never seen a Mandalorian there.
See, he acknowledged it.
Tatooine it is then.
I was just about to say that. Is The Mandalorian reviewing this show as it plays out too? My next critique isn't a writing issue, but an editing and directing one. Why is it we're getting this epic music as the Mandalorian flies to Tatooine? It's Tatooine.
If there's a bright center to the universe, you're on the planet that it's farthest from.
They should be playing softer music, something more mysterious or treacherous. The music cue here is far more appropriate for escaping an explosion, catching a friend, or swinging across a chasm, not cruising above a desolate wasteland. We see our hero park in Amy Sedaris' space hangar, and the Mandalorian reveals that he's a little more accepting of droids since the IG-11 sacrificed itself for their lives. Luckily, Amy Sedaris, by way of R5 cameo from Star Wars, gives us and the Mandalorian information on the lost town of Mos Pelgo, where he may find the other Mandalorian he seeks. What's funny is that the R5 unit still has a bad motivator, as it takes a while for it to join the group and display the map. I thought that was a nice touch. For some reason, Mos Pelgo isn't on any map of Tatooine. Apparently it was wiped out after the war, but why even have this as an obstacle? Are they trying to emulate Obi-Wan's quest to find Kamino from Attack of the Clones? Whether the town is on a map or not, why this type of obstacle? If he goes to where this town used to be and there's nothing there, then we have a real obstacle because what he's looking for isn't where it should be. But Mos Pelgo missing on a map and it still being there raises questions as to why it's not on the map in the first place. Why must it be isolated? Is it haunted? Are the villagers xenophobes? Do they kill all who cross their borders? Is it a the Sandhills have eyes type of scenario? What is the main point for the mystery?
It just raises too many questions.
Amy Sedaris then volunteers this tidbit of information.
They're gonna see that big hunk of metal long before you land.
Yeah, and? So what if they see his ship? Do they have the means to shoot it down? Are they going to cloak the village somehow? Why is this even worth mentioning? Well, someone in the production wants several cool shots of the Mandalorian traveling across the plains on a speeder and reminding us that he has a friendly relationship with the Sand People. It's a little contrived. While his quest isn't restricted by a time frame, there is an underlying urgency. The longer the child is away from its people, the more likely its life will be at risk. After all, it is still being hunted by Moff Gideon. The Mandalorian finds the town, and there's nothing really special about it, aside from the fact that it looks to be very small. It's just there. Quiet, peaceful, pretty ordinary actually. Nothing about it to justify absence from a map. They are also a mining town. What they are mining I am not sure of. I found Tatooine in the Star Wars films to be somewhat valueless. My understanding was that during the time of the Empire, it was a safe haven for criminals to get a respite or find work. It was under the control of the Hutts and not really under the scrutiny of the Galactic Empire. We know from the first movie that there aren't any Imperials on the planet, otherwise Vader would have ordered his men to contact their garrison to find the droids, not this.
Send a detachment down to retrieve them. See to it personally, Commander. There'll be no one to stop us this time.
But regardless of those inconsistencies, this is the framework of the story. This town that's not on any map may have a Mandalorian living here. Our hero enters the local bar and asks about others that look like him, and he is referred to the town marshal. We meet him immediately, who is wearing a very familiar set of Mandalorian armor. It's got some type of acid damage and is a little too small for the wearer, but it looks to still be able to do the job.
I've been searching for you for many parsecs.
Really? So what is Star Wars trying to say here? That parsecs are a unit of time in this galaxy? Or has he actually been searching many areas spanning 3.26 light years? If it is distance or sectors, shouldn't the line be, I've been searching for you across many parsecs? What is it with Disney Star Wars trying to reinforce this Han Solo claim? It would have been far more easier and true to Han Solo's character if he simply misspoke while trying to sell his skills and ship's reliability to Obi-Wan and Luke. But no. Lesser writers have to go and try and redefine the f***ing word like some Orwellian Ministry of Truth staffer. But I digress. This is Cobb Vanth, the town's protector. His appearance and demeanor confirm to the Mandalorian that he is not a fellow warrior. Now, this is a good obstacle. The Mandalorian has come all this way essentially for nothing. He's not going to find more of his people or the network of coverts he was hoping for to complete his quest. But he can't leave the town just yet. Only a Mandalorian can wear their armor, so he wants Marshal Cobb to give it up. Kind of a familiar situation, is it not? Just 10 minutes earlier, the Mandalorian was being ordered to surrender his armor, and now, in this bar, he's making the same demands to Cobb. The difference? The Mandalorian is motivated by his code, and the Cyclops criminal was motivated by his greed. Cobb isn't willing to cooperate, as this armor is what allows him to protect his town from bandits and sand people. This gives us a dimension to Cobb, as he's not wearing the armor for direct personal gain, but as an actual lawman of the town. It's not a simple good guy versus bad guy situation here. There are other factors at play. Cobb is smart to think that he's going to have to fight to keep the armor, and they're about to throw down when the ground shakes and their duel is put on pause. Both step outside to see a sandworm tunnel underneath the town, burst from the ground, and swallow a bantha. This isn't actually a sandworm. The episode calls it a krayt dragon. I know of krayt dragons, seen their images and heard their roar. Never knew they burrowed and traveled underground. Seems like the new stewards of Star Wars are going a little bit beyond the homage territory of a desert world from another franchise. Also, I find it strange that after this variation of the krayt dragon passes through town, the buildings don't sink inward towards the collapsed surface from the tunnel it just made. It's as if the production is finding no difference between sand and water for this creature. Even if it displaces the sand, it still levels out after it has passed. Very strange. Cobb makes a request, have the Mandalorian help him kill the dragon, and he'll hand over the armor. Neither of them will have to fight each other. The Mandalorian agrees and offers the use of his ship to blast it from the sky. Apparently that won't work according to Cobb. The dragon will sense the ship coming and will stay underground. So they'll have to come up with another plan. And has anyone else noticed how the Mandalorian is no longer concerned with finding other Mandalorians to help with his quest? That's right. True to form from last season, we have another side quest that detracts from the main plot. This one comes with a reward of damaged Mandalorian armor. The episode has now become narrative filler. If the Mandalorian's quest was really of priority, he would have left to find the other coverts, and once finished delivering the child to his people, he could come back to this town and get the armor back. And let's say if Cobb fled, then he'd have a new mission of tracking him down. But for some reason, the writers of this show really have a love for distracting side quests. It's really strange to watch something that functions more like a video game, but not earn any real experience points or be able to make decisions yourself. This new plot has Cobb and the Mandalorian travel to the krayt dragon's lair where they plan to destroy it. During that journey, Cobb gives us his backstory of how he got the armor and why it's important. It turns out the Empire was occupying Tatooine after all, which makes the scum and villainy we saw at Mos Eisley either the bravest bunch in the galaxy or the dumbest to be operating right under the Empire's nose. After the second Death Star was destroyed, what was left of the Empire took off from Tatooine, and the mining collective came in to stake their claim on Mos Pelgo. Cobb managed to get away along with a crate of precious stones. After wandering the desert for days, he was found by Jawas and traded those stones for water and the Mandalorian armor they scavenged. He returned to Mos Pelgo, drove out the mining collective, and has been their protector ever since. It's a solid story, simple, interesting, a little questionable regarding the continuity, but shows us the type of man Cobb is and what he values. He's not a coward that fled when things got rough. He regrouped, came back stronger, and is something of a hero. When his story ends, the two find themselves in a valley where they are met by some Tusken wolves. Or maybe they're womp rats. I'm not sure. I thought womp rats were a little bit over 2 meters in size and had tails, but these guys are much smaller, don't have tails, but rather some type of spines and natural armadillo-like armor. For the purposes of this video, I'll refer to them as Tusken wolves. The Mandalorian growls in Tusken and befriends the creatures. The Sand People reveal themselves and we get a little bit more of what we saw the last time the Mandalorian was on Tatooine. Only in this instance, instead of sign language, there's a verbiage as well. Personally, I think the vocals are unnecessary. I really enjoyed the idea that they spoke in signals and the only sounds they made were more screams or battle cries, but that's just me. From this interaction, we learn that the Sand People also wish to destroy the krayt dragon as it has been terrorizing their people as well. This takes us to their campsite where we learn that tensions are high between the Sand People and the citizens of Mos Pelgo. Both sides claim the other steals from them, and it is the Mandalorian that has to mediate between the two. The following morning, they hunker down by the cave entrance where the krayt dragon dwells. Apparently, this entrance led to a Sarlacc pit that the krayt dragon devoured some time ago. That's pretty scary and interesting. We learn through the Mandalorian that the Sand People have been keeping the krayt dragon at bay by studying its digestive cycle and feeding it banthas to keep it in the cave. Hold on a moment. If the Sand People have been feeding this thing to keep it in the cave, why is it terrorizing Mos Pelgo and eating their banthas? Either the Sand People are incorrect about the digestive cycle they claim to know so well, or this is a plot contrivance as a result of not checking one's work. This is one example why it is important not to get too excited and shoot your first draft. We have two pieces of information presented to the audience that contradict. As a writer, you either correct the contradiction or make both statements true. How can we make both statements true? Simple. They could have added a second krayt dragon. Not only does it avoid the contradiction, but it also escalates the problem. Instead of having one dragon to deal with, they now have two. And the show does give us a great moment where you think that is what is happening. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. After seeing the krayt dragon feast on a Tusken Raider instead of a bantha, the Sand People regroup to come up with a new plan. They need larger numbers for the plan to succeed, so the Mandalorian volunteers the residents of Mos Pelgo to help in exchange for peace between the two people. Cobb and the Mandalorian head back to town to alert the residents, who object to the notion of helping these monsters, but are convinced that this is their best option to solve the problems of the krayt dragon and the Sand People. They agree and start digging holes to plant explosive charges under the surface. Their plan is to lure the krayt dragon out of its cave and detonate the bombs under its stomach, which is a weak area of the creature. Sounds like a good plan. The only thing that I have to ask is why are they digging those trenches so far away from the cave entrance? Shouldn't they do it closer so they don't have to work as hard to lure the dragon so far out? Why aren't Cobb and the Mandalorian helping to bury those explosives? They're just standing there. Also, why couldn't Cobb and the townspeople do this on their own? The residents of Mos Pelgo are supplying the explosives. They're also digging the trenches. How could this not have been organized by Cobb earlier? This isn't even the Mandalorian's plan, it's the Sand People's, and the only service the Mandalorian has provided here is as a translator. Outside of that, he serves no real value. These are all just puzzle pieces that barely fit together to lead to a specific set piece. This is another lesson for writers. When your characters are involved in a plan, you need to ask yourself, why this character? And most importantly, what do they bring to the situation that allows for this plan to work and not someone else? Currently, all the Mandalorian has is the ability to bridge the divide between Mos Pelgo and the Sand People. But with this type of plan and how the roles are played, the Sand People aren't really needed either. As I stated earlier, the town has bombs and the manpower to bury them. They also have banthas to lure out the krayt dragon, so it's all about setting things up and being patient enough for the dragon to come out. Everything outside of that is superfluous. This is where the verisimilitude of the plot falls apart. The episode is moving along with the theme of teamwork and reconciliation, which is a good driving force for a story. However, while they have the theme and a motivation for all the parties, the connective tissue and the reliance on each of them needing to work together is absent. They are missing factors that give value to the Mandalorian, the Mos Pelgo people, and the Sand People working together. It's almost there. In order for it to work, we need to shuffle some things around. First, let's address the premise that Cobb needs the Mandalorian's help. So we have to ask ourselves, what can the Mandalorian believably provide that a small mining town doesn't have? I would say explosives, but you could argue, script doctor, they're a mining town, they could have explosives. I would say sure, that could be an option, but I would like to play up the isolationist aspect of the town. We have been told by the barkeep that they don't get many visitors, which means they probably don't often get supplies, and if they're able to remain hidden for many years, then they should be somewhat self-sufficient. Let's play with that concept that they are miners, but what they mine doesn't require explosives, or better yet, because of their isolated ways, they don't have access to explosives, so they mine the hard way, with their hands and tools. This would be a skill we could use to play into the plan to kill the krayt dragon. We can then give the Mandalorian value by having him provide the explosives. The explosives are the only things that will do the job. They'll need to be dug into the ground and buried fast, so that's where the mining skills and experience comes in. Now we've made these two parties dependent on each other to achieve a goal. So how do we get the Sand People involved? Well, there's two options. The first is that the Sand People could have the banthas for bait. But it is my understanding that the Sand People cherish the banthas, so let's put that aside as a plan B option for getting them involved and focus on something a little more valuable, such as the location of the krayt dragon. Let's say that Cobb has never been able to track it down because he can't leave the city, otherwise the Sand People may get wind he's gone and attack. This is where we can utilize the Mandalorian's relationship with the Sand People to make a truce and learn from them where the krayt dragon dwells. Now we have three valuable factors specific to each party that compels them to work together for this common goal. The Sand People will trade the location of the dragon's den in exchange for the corpse and leave Mos Pelgo alone. The Mos Pelgo residents will bury the explosives provided by the Mandalorian outside its cave, and all three of them will make efforts to lure the dragon out to be destroyed. You can inject drama by having Cobb wanting to use banthas as bait and the Sand People refusing. While this argument continues, the Mandalorian repeats what he did with the Mudhorn in the second episode of the first season and flushes out the krayt dragon by charging into its cave and causing some havoc. That shuffling of elements we've done between the parties now gets us to what the episode really wants to put on display: the krayt dragon set piece. The final thing we have to change is the krayt dragon. It should not have the means to tunnel through the sand. Doing so would make the entire plan of burying bombs to blow it up from below useless, because what if the krayt dragon burrowed under the explosives before coming to the surface to attack? It's again another issue where the writers aren't checking their own work. Yes, they're drawing from a known successful tactic from the lore of Star Wars, but their confusing desire to turn the krayt dragon into more of a worm pretty much negates that tactic. They should have just kept the dragon as it originally was or come up with a new tactic. Regardless, these actions still get us to the set piece, and it's pretty cool. It still has a strange issue of the two guys wearing protective Mandalorian armor hanging out way behind the villagers and Sand People, but once that dragon is revealed, it is an awesome sight to behold. It could have been better, but another strange line creates a contradiction.
I'm gonna hit it. No, wait. We only have one shot.
Except they don't. There's another bantha carrying explosives so they can try again. It would have been more accurate for the Mandalorian to argue not to waste the opportunity, as this plan still has a chance. They manage to get the dragon into position and detonate the bombs, but this dragon is too large and powerful to be stopped that way. Which is pretty good, because now these guys have to think of another plan on the fly. Well, I guess it is a good thing they didn't bury all of the explosives and had that one bantha left over, because now they're gonna need it. The krayt dragon retreats to its cave and a brief moment later bursts through the mountain behind everyone. This is where I originally thought there was a second krayt dragon, because that would have been awesome. Either making it the mate of the other dragon or its parent. Either way, it would escalate the stakes and make that contradiction we noticed regarding the Sand People feeding it to keep it at bay but still plaguing Mos Pelgo true. But alas, it is the same dragon. A missed opportunity, but hey, that's what happens when you don't check your work. With the help of Cobb, the Mandalorian distracts the dragon so the Sand People and villagers can escape, and then takes the detonator from Cobb and lures the dragon to the bantha carrying the last of their explosives. The dragon eats both of them, which is odd because we've seen a few instances where the Mandalorian with his jetpack is fast enough to evade the dragon's maw, so he could have gotten out of the way and not joined the bantha inside the dragon's belly. But I guess that wouldn't be as cool as him later using the stun setting on his weapon to escape the dragon and blow it up while still rocketing away. With the dragon defeated, the Sand People begin harvesting the meat and the krayt dragon pearl inside. Cobb hands over his armor and the Mandalorian leaves the villagers behind, having made a new friend. In the distance, a stranger watches. A stranger who has a very familiar face, mostly because there were millions of them made decades earlier. Who is this person? Could it be the original owner of the armor the Mandalorian took back? Could it be another clone just living his life on the planet? Hopefully, we'll find out next episode. Even though I have my gripes with the parts I mentioned, it was still pretty entertaining. I liked Cobb. I found the set piece at the end to be well done. I appreciate the more appropriate runtime closer to an hour, although I do think some of the slower parts could have been trimmed to tighten up the pacing. The cinematography, the sets, the stagecraft digital background, all were really well utilized. Even though this episode comes across as filler with regards to the Mandalorian story, we did get a proper story of significance for Cobb, the people of Mos Pelgo, and the Sand People. The Sand People will leave Mos Pelgo alone, and Cobb has one last faction to worry about as Marshal of the town. Plus, if the following episodes deliver on the mystery of the armor that the Mandalorian received from Cobb, then it will be more of a stepping stone to the Mandalorian's overall goal, instead of it appearing as just a side quest. It was also awesome to see a fight scene at the beginning that was actually choreographed and didn't have any laziness that needed to be hidden with quick cuts and close-up shots. In my opinion, I think this was a well-done episode. Not its worst, even with its stumbles, but definitely not the best episode either. I would say it's pretty average. I really hope we don't stay on Tatooine too long. I'd like to see other planets, species, and cultures. But I understand what the show is doing. They're trying to create a safe and familiar environment to build a foundation fans and newcomers can trust. I just hope that once that trust is earned, the show delivers something new that opens up more of the galaxy of Star Wars. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to add to this episode, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and never forget, it all starts with the script.